And second, when this money gets doled out, what tends to happen is that, let's say they give some money to some. A good example of this would be, it tends to get politicized. And a good example of this would be, let's say they give some money to to a poor community, right? To a low income community, right? Now, this low income community has such little money, it needs actually more money than, say, a more affluent community to the school in that affluent community. It needs more money to level it out, right? But if you give more money to the low income school, the the more affluent income school or community is going to start complaining, saying, "Well, why do they get more money? What did they do that was so much better than them?" Now, if you go to them and say, "Oh, well, they're low income, so they need more money to level it out," they're not going to accept that. They're going to say, "No, that's not equal." So, what happens is the affluent community gets just as much money as the low income community, even though they don't need the money. And that money could actually be used to good use if they took that money that they gave to the affluent school and gave it to the low income school. But you're not going to do that. Why? Because the money is politicized. And everything has to be equal. Everything has to be fair. Even though it's not unfair, it's inherently unfair to ask a low income school to compete against a high income school or an affluent school or an affluent school district. It's inherently unfair, but that's what the Obama administration is saying. Low income school that doesn't have any money, I want you to compete against an affluent school. And let's see how well you do. And we're gonna give you both the same money. We're gonna give you both the same amount of money, and let's see how well you do. Gee, now who do you think's gonna win that? My guess is the low income community's probably gonna lose that. The low income districts probably gonna lose that fight, making this system inherently unfair. And it's the same thing for the Fostering Innovation Fund. It gets politicized. It's not. It gets politicized. I mean, you're doling out money. You're not giving. You're not making it equal. You're making it equitable, which means everyone gets the same amount. So you're not really changing the system. You're not really making the educational system better. You're just, politicizing it and covering your ass, which I didn't think was the point of the reform. I mean, this is supposed to be reform. It's not supposed to be education tweak. It's supposed to be education reform. So, another issue I have is I saw a lot of talk about charter schools. And I find this concerning because, for one, there's no evidence to suggest that charter schools are more effective schools than public schools. I'm sure there are good charter schools out there that probably get 3 or 4 times the money that a public school would get. But yeah, okay, there are probably good charter schools out there, right? But there are good public schools out there too. So what are you saying? Charter schools have not been proven to be more effective than public schools. So why lean on them so much? I mean, it's one of the big tenets of this plan here. They're leaning on charter schools, and they're not any more effective. I also find, now this is just a personal thing, but I just feel like charter schools are a way to undercut the unions, and I kind of feel like that is, and I kind of wonder why the Obama administration, you know, supports a policy that undercuts unions when that is supposedly supposed to be his base. I don't know. But I feel like charter schools undercut unions, and I don't know why he would support a policy that undercuts unions, because charter schools do undercut unions. I mean, because those are privately financed, so they don't have to adhere to the law. They don't have to hire union teachers. I mean, they don't have to hire union teachers. I mean, there may be some maybe some teachers that are in unions that are in charter schools, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, charter schools don't hire union teachers, I don't believe. So, and I feel like it's sort of a way to undercut unions, you know. I also feel like this use of charter schools is it's sort of like putting a band-aid on your face when you really need a total facelift. You know, it doesn't matter if you use charter schools if the system that's currently in place is still broken, and it's still broken. So it's just bizarre that they're just putting band-aids on the problem, and they're not getting the facelift, you know. And I find that to be a bit disturbing. The last thing I wanted to talk about was that in order to sort of improve certain schools, they have these things called school turnaround grants. And what these are is they're going to give this school a grant. They're going to take on one of the models, if you will, and implement it, and hopefully their school turns around. Now, there are 4 models. One model is called the transformation model, which is basically you fire the principal, and maybe you fire the principal, you hire a new principal, and maybe you start up some new after-school programs, or some programs to help the kids learn or something, right? The second model is turnaround model, where you fire the principal and at least half of the teachers, and you hire principal and half of the teachers, obviously, and then you do the same thing where you institute new policies that help the kids, that help turn around the school, right? The third one is restart model, which is you shut down the school and turn it into a charter school, basically. And the fourth one is school closure model, which I'm sure by the title you know what that one is. They just shut down the school and they ship the kids off to a new school. So I find I have several problems with this. As you see, like most of all those models doesn't seem to address the issue, which is the kids learning. It seems to be more administrative moves, which may or may not help. And I would say it probably doesn't help, because you're making these administrative moves and you're not really addressing the issue of how do we teach the kids better. How do we improve the curriculum and teach the kids better? Maybe we have to improve the curriculum. Is that ever looked at in those models? Nah. Why do we do that? That's crazy. But yeah. So that's sort of my issue. That's one of my issues. Another issue is, again, the charter schools. Why? Why are you relying so heavily on the charter schools? It makes no sense. It really does. And I find this issue of closing schools, basically them giving up, like, okay, well, screw them. They don't. Those kids don't need an education. We'll just send them, halfway across town, where the kid has to get up at like 5 in the morning and catch two buses to get there and back. The kid goes from like 5 in the morning, doesn't get home till 5. That doesn't strike me as being very good for the kids' overall capacity to learn. That strikes me as being a hindrance, not a help. So I really gotta question these turnaround models. I'm not okay. In closing, I'm not saying that that they don't have some good ideas. There are some other things in here that I liked. I think they talked a little about a pre kindergarten school, like having kids go to pre kindergarten schools. I think that's actually a good idea. I think studies have shown that kids who go to pre kindergarten schools tend to learn better. So I think that's a good idea. And some of the things I talked about are pretty good. But it all just falls apart as soon as you do the race for the top and you start doing these top down incentive based structures that everything's going to come from. I mean, it's just not going to work that way. That's the way we've always been doing it, and it's not working. Like I said, certain schools just aren't going to get enough money, and the money's going to get politicized to the point where it's not going to make a difference. And that's the problem. And until they address that, they're not reforming this. They're merely tweaking it, and I just don't see how this is reform at all. I mean, it's not reform. So, that's all I have. I will leave the PDF file in the bottom. You guys can check it out, read for yourself. I'll also leave another PDF file, which I thought was a very good critique of it. And some other articles that I thought were pretty good in their critique of it. So that's all I have. I will talk to everyone later. Guys, Progressive. Peace.